Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars The Black Series action figure review. Today we're taking a look at what could possibly be one of my favourite Black Series releases of all time. This is such a deep dive into the weird and wonderful world of Star Wars, and it's a real love letter to the old expanded universe. This is the Last Command 4-pack and it features Luke Skywalker, Joruus C'baoth, Mara Jade and Luke, the evil clone of Luke Skywalker. Now this set is based on the final instalment in the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, and despite the fact that casual fans and collectors probably have no idea who 50% of these characters are, this set is such a fever dream in the sense that it's one of those packs we never thought we'd see. We never thought we'd get some of these characters as action figures, even though Hasbro had ample opportunity back in 2007 to release these characters as part of their comic pack range when they were releasing every expanded universe character under the sun. For whatever reason, that never happened, it never materialised, and so to see these characters as part of the Black Series of all things is so bizarre, but it is so welcome. When this set was announced about a year or so ago, I couldn't believe what we were seeing, and this set definitely delivers. Hasbro didn't pull any punches with regards to the overall quality of these figures. Sure, there's a bit of retooling and some reuse going on, but it's for all the right reasons, and the figures in this set are absolutely fantastic. Now unfortunately, this set was either overproduced or underperformed at retail, and so has since made its way to deep discount. And I realise I'm a little bit late to the party with this review, but at the same time, if you've never seen this pack before and you really like what you see, be sure to hit the link in the video description, as at the time of filming this review, the Last Command 4-pack is currently available at Star Action Figures for slightly more than a basic Black Series figure, which when you consider the overall quality of these figures is an absolute bargain, and I can't recommend this set enough. So we are going to dive into this review very shortly. Before we do, I'd like to extend a huge thanks to Brandon and the Hasbro team for providing this set for a review, and before we take a look at the action figures themselves, let's take a look at the very unique packaging that each of these figures come in. So I'm actually going to present this portion of the review from in front of the camera because quite honestly this packaging is just too damn big to try and manoeuvre it from behind it. But as you can see, the Last Command 4-pack is packaged in this beautiful presentation style box. We've got some really nice artwork on the front panel that's taken from the graphic novel adaptation of the book. Down in the bottom corner we do have the names of the characters, and we also have the Legends banner across the front of the packaging. Very similar to a comic book or a novel, and it's very similar in terms of its design to the previous publishing figures that we've seen in the Black Series, in the sense that you've got this panel that opens up via a couple of Velcro pads and that displays the figures inside. But all around this box, down the spine and on the back, we've got these panels and artwork taken from the comic book which look absolutely fantastic. And then as you can see down this side, we do have some more illustrations and the names of the characters once again. Now inside the box, when you open up that panel, like I said, you've got the window there where the figures would be displayed. You do have a brief description of each character included in the set and some more artwork from the comic book. So really cool stuff. I was at war with myself over whether or not to open this set just because of how nicely it's presented, but the figures inside are too cool not to take a look at, so that is what we're going to do. So we'll kick off this review by taking a look at the first figure, and that's Joruus C'baoth. So here we have Joruus C'baoth, who is hands down my favourite figure from the Last Command 4-pack. He's also the newest figure in the set as well, in the sense that he uses the least amount of recycled parts. Other than the accessories that this figure comes with, the only recycled parts this figure has are the legs, which are taken from the Lando Calrissian in Skiff God Disguise Black Series figure. Everything else about this guy is brand new, which is really refreshing to see from a subline of figures that for the most part has been really heavily reliant on straight repaints and retools. To get this level of new tooling on a publishing figure is really nice to see, and I'm thrilled with how this figure turned out. What Hasbro have achieved with this guy is nothing short of incredible, given the fact that up until this point we've only ever seen Joruus C'baoth as a 2D illustration on a comic book page. So to be able to bring this character to life in action figure form, to give him such a realistic and lifelike head sculpt is really cool. And they've gone to town on the paint applications. As you can see, the beard and the hair is really nicely painted, has so much depth and realism going on. You've got that photoreal face printing tech applied to the face itself, and even the subtle sculpted textures in the robes are really nicely done. They've spared no expense with this figure, and I'm really happy with how he turned out. Now, as I said, the accessories that this figure comes with are reliant on reuse as well, and we'll touch base on those in just a little bit. But before we do that, let's touch on the articulation. For the most part, it's to a modern standard, but obviously, being reliant on some of that reuse, there are some hindrances and some unfortunate engineering decisions made. But for the most part, he's a highly posable, really well articulated figure. Unfortunately, in the head, because we have that long hair and long beard, the head sculpt does restrict a little bit of movement in the head itself. You do have that standard barbell joint where you've got a ball joint in the base of the head and the bottom of the neck, so if that hair and beard wasn't present, you'd get a really nice fluid range of movement there, but some of that articulation is restricted, unfortunately. We do have butterfly joints at the shoulders, which are really nice and deeply cut. You get some really nice movement out of those, and obviously you've got the hinge so you can raise and lower the arm. We have hinges at the wrists and elbows. There's also an ab crunch, but due to the plastic overlay of the robes, that articulation point is a little bit difficult to access, but thankfully we have a really nice fluid waist joint, which is really nice. Great posability available from that. The lower portion of the figure's robes are obviously soft goods, so the ball jointed hips are not really hindered. You can still get the legs in some good poses, and we also have swivel cuts at the upper thigh, a double joint in the knee, and hinges and rockers at the ankle. As I said, the legs are recycled from Lando in skiff guard disguise. You've got the pins visible there, and again the aforementioned double knee joint, which is a little bit outdated by modern standards, but it doesn't affect overall posability, and you don't see those pins anyway. So I'm really happy with how this figure turned out. Articulation wise, you can get him in all the poses that you'd need, and like I said, from a sculpt point of view, he's absolutely superb. Couldn't have asked for more with regards to this figure. Now, accessory wise, as you can see, he does come with the lightsaber, which is a generic lightsaber hilt given a new lick of paint. I think we've seen this hilt sculpt with previous figures such as General Grievous, and then obviously you've got a brand new red blade attached, which can be removed. Unfortunately, there's no loop, hole or peg system available to peg the hilt onto the belt, but that's not a major issue. We also have a gold medallion around the figure's neck, which is a separately sculpted piece, so technically classes as an accessory. And then as you can see, he does come with interchangeable hands, and these feature Force Lightning, which look absolutely incredible. These are taken from the Revenge of the Sith Darth Sidious figure, and I'm absolutely fine with that. Once again, the reuse here makes sense. It wouldn't have been very logical to sculpt new hands and new lightning bolts for this figure, so I'm happy with how that turned out. And you do get two of these so that you can recreate that iconic shot from the comic book, and we'll take a look at that later on in the review. But yeah, a really well accessorized, really well articulated, and a beautifully sculpted figure. I'm really happy with how Joruus C'baoth turned out, and he is, in my opinion, the main selling point of the Last Command 4-pack. Next up we have Luke, the evil clone of Luke Skywalker, and I'm going to start by saying I am absolutely obsessed with this figure. I love the way this one turned out. It is such a deep cut Star Wars character that, like I said, casual fans are going to have absolutely no clue about, but I am thrilled to see this, not only as part of my action figure collection, but as part of the Black Series line. I honestly gave up hope that we'd see characters like this when they weren't made as part of the 30th anniversary and Legacy Collection comic pack range. So to see this in the 6-inch scale is absolutely unreal. It feels like a fever dream, and it's an absolute treat, and Hasbro did a great job with this figure. Now, it is the most, or the biggest, Frankenstein's monster of the set, in the sense that it uses the most amount of recycled parts from previous figures. I am all in favour of this because the parts that it does use are of a modern standard, so it's nicely sculpted, nicely articulated, and looks absolutely superb. because it uses so many different parts as well, it almost feels like a new figure in its own right, which feels really weird to say, but I'm thrilled with how this one turned out and it looks great on the shelf. Now, as you can see, first and foremost, he does feature a soft goods robe, which is this really nice vibrant blue colour and is comparable in terms of its quality to the robe featured on the Imperial Light Cruiser Luke Skywalker figure from The Mandalorian. It flows over the figure really nicely, it casts a great shadow over the figure's face, but I will say, right out of the box, it is creased to high heaven and almost ruins the look of the figure, so it is worth running the iron over the robe just to improve the figure from a visual standpoint. As you can see, it really does go a long way, and this figure just looks absolutely superb. He really does have that all-important shelf presence, and I'm thrilled once again with how this one turned out. Now, to get a much better look at the articulation and the sculpt of the figure, we do have to remove the robe, so we'll do that, and then we'll dive into the posability on this guy. Now, before we get into the articulation, I do think we need to spend a little bit of time just appreciating the head sculpt on this figure, because we all know that Hasbro have struggled with Mark Hamill likenesses over the years, but this one, despite being absolutely manic looking, is a fantastic Mark Hamill likeness. I love the level of detail that Hasbro poured into this one. The detail in the hair is absolutely fantastic. The likeness, as I mentioned, is really good. And the level of detail in the face itself is really nice as well. You've got those bags under the eyes, that really menacing look on his face. It's just an absolutely superb head sculpt, and I'm thrilled to see this in the Black Series. It really does look superb. Now, in terms of articulation, he is packed to the brim, and like I said, because he uses so many recycled parts from previous figures, they're all recent releases, so the articulation is of a modern standard. Now, bear with me while I remember, but if I'm not mistaken, this figure uses parts from 3 previously released figures. We have the torso and lower tunic of Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi from The Phantom Menace. We have the arms of Jabeam Obi-Wan from the Obi-Wan series, and then we have the legs of Jedi training or Dagobah training Luke Skywalker from The Empire Strikes Back. So a real amalgamation of all these different characters and all these different figures, but it just looks superb. The paint applications are really nice and crisp, and just the overall look of this figure is absolutely phenomenal, and I'm thrilled to have this in the collection. So I'll just give you a quick glance around the rest of the figure. Again, great sculpted detail, and in terms of articulation, like I said, absolutely packed to the brim. So we do have the standard ball joint at the head. As usual, there is a ball joint in the base of the head and the bottom of the neck, so you get a really nice free-flowing range of movement there. We have really deep cut butterfly joints at the shoulders, which really allow you to get the arms in some great poses. The Jedi tunic is a soft plastic overlay, so that doesn't hinder any of the articulation, which is nice to see. We also have hinges at the elbows and hinges at the wrists. However, this is where the one gripe I have with this figure falls into place, and because the way the sleeves have been sculpted, it really does hinder the articulation in the wrists, especially when you've got the figure displayed with the lightsaber. It really limits the amount of poses that you can get this figure in once the lightsaber is in hand. I'm not going to complain about it too much because I've been able to get this figure in the pose that I want him in on my shelf, but that is something to bear in mind if you pick this figure up for yourself. We do have a nice fluid ball joint at the torso, however, and there is a split down the side of the lower tunic so that the ball hinged hips are not hindered, which is nice to see. We also have swivel cuts at the upper thigh, a hinge in the knee, and the hinge and rocker at the ankle. So great articulation on this one for the most part. Like I said, you can get him in most of the poses that you'd want to get him in. And again, from a visual standpoint, sculpt, detail, likeness, absolutely killer figure. I am thrilled with how this one turned out. Now, in addition to the soft goods robe, accessory wise, he does come with Luke's original lightsaber that belonged at one point to Anakin Skywalker. This is a previously used sculpt, I'm not sure from which figure, but we do have a peg on the hilt The blade is of course removable, and then the hilt can be placed into the plug on the belt, which is a really nice touch. So I'm absolutely thrilled with this figure. I think it looks great, and like I said, it's a fever dream when it comes to materializing in the action figure line. Never thought we'd see this character, so to get him is an absolute joy. So now we're getting into the really heavy reuse side of things when it comes to the Last Command 4-pack, and we'll take a look at Mara Jade first. This is a really cool figure for the most part. I'm really happy to finally have this one in the collection. It is a repack of the Mara Jade figure that was released back in 2023 as part of the publishing line. However, that figure was made in really limited quantities, and unfortunately I missed out on it. So I'm thrilled to be able to add this one to the collection via the Last Command 4-pack. It's a really nice figure in its own right, however it does feel like the most outdated figure in the set, despite being really nicely sculpted and very well accessorized. This figure actually comes with an additional accessory that the first release didn't actually come with, so that's really cool and an incentive for those who have the previous release to pick up this set as well. Sculpt wise, it looks fantastic. Hasbro did a really cool job with this one, but the figure itself is actually a retool of an even older figure that was released back in 2018. The base of this figure is taken from Jaina Solo, who, like I said, was released about 6 or 7 years ago, and as such this one doesn't really hold up to a modern standard, especially in terms of articulation. So we'll go through that first, and then we'll take a look at some of the finer details on Mara Jade. First and foremost, we have a ball joint at the head. Like Joruus C'baoth, her hair has been sculpted in a really nice dynamic way, but because it's so long and flowing, unfortunately it does get in the way a little bit and slightly hinders the articulation. But again, not a major issue. You can still get this one in all the poses that you'd need to. We do have hinges at the shoulders, elbows and wrists. There is a ball joint at the diaphragm, and we also have an ab crunch, which is an actual hinge. So as you can see, we get up and down movement out of the torso. We have ball hinges at the hips and swivel cuts at the upper thigh. Now the figure is wearing a belt with a holster, and the holster itself is actually glued to the leg. So the swivel cut on this thigh is a little bit of a non-factor because you can't really rotate it. You don't get any range of movement out of that whatsoever, which is a huge shame. We also have ball hinges in the knees. As you can see, it's a double hinge with the pins visible. So again, slightly outdated articulation engineering. And then we have hinges and rockers at the ankles. But from a visual standpoint, this is a really nice looking figure. The head sculpt in particular is really, really good. Again, like Joruus C'baoth and the clone of Luke Skywalker, this is a character we've never really seen in live action. We've seen press shots from magazines and stuff like that where an actress has portrayed Mara Jade, but this figure doesn't appear to be based on that. They've taken a little bit of creative license with the head sculpt itself, but they've still crafted an absolutely fantastic one. The photoreal face printing technology once again goes a really long way in adding some depth and realism to the head sculpt itself. Once again, the hair is sculpted really, really nicely, and the rest of the figure looks fantastic as well. The paint applications on this one are really nice and crisp, and again, she's a great addition to the collection. Thrilled to finally have this fan favourite character in the 6-inch line, and she looks great with the other characters in this set. Now, like I said, she does come with a fair amount of articulation, and she also comes with a heavy amount of accessories as well. She comes with a blaster pistol, a lightsaber. She also has the scarf around the neck with the goggles attached, and then we also have an alternate head with this one, which is a really cool inclusion. So as you can see, once you remove the scarf from around the neck of Mara Jade, you can replace the head, and this is a really cool feature. I absolutely love that Hasbro included this with the set and didn't just repack Mara Jade from her first release. It gives a bit of an incentive for those who did pick up the original figure to pick up this set as well, as it provides a nice variation, and it's just a really cool accessory. I really wish that alternate heads and alternate hands were something that Hasbro did a little bit more often with mainline Black Series releases, but be that as it may, like I said, this is a great addition, a really cool inclusion. You've got the scarf wrapped around the head of Mara there with the goggles sculpted at the top, as you can see as well. you do have the purple blade that attaches to the lightsaber hilt. The hilt itself, as you saw earlier, can be attached to the peg on Mara's belt, and the blaster pistol can be stored in the holster there. Now, it is interesting to point out that even the weapons on this figure are repacked from the Jaina Solo figure that was released a few years ago. So there's not a great deal of new stuff going on with this figure. If you've picked up Jaina Solo and have yet to pick up Mara Jade, you kind of know what to expect from an articulation and accessories standpoint. The only gripe I have with this figure is the fact that the hands are posed quite open, and it proves quite difficult to get the figure to hold the lightsaber, especially with one hand. It just tends to fall out. So a little bit of boiling water and some reposing may be necessary on this one, but once you get that lightsaber in both hands, like I said, alternate heads in play and all that sort of stuff, this is a great addition to the collection, and I'm thrilled, like I said, to finally have such a fan favourite character as Mara Jade in the Black Series line. Hopefully somewhere down the road Hasbro revisit this one and update it to a modern standard, but with what we've got, I'm pretty happy. So really cool addition to the pack and a great addition to the collection overall. And finally, to round out the set, we have Luke Skywalker himself in his Jedi Knight outfit. This is a great figure in its own right, however, it is the weakest of the 4 figures included in this set in my opinion. It is a repack of the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary figure from 2023, and while it is a fantastic figure from an articulation and overall sculpt standpoint, unlike Mara Jade, this figure actually comes with less accessories than its original release. With the Return of the Jedi figure, we had the interchangeable panel on the shirt, which featured the plain black tunic. As you can see on this one, we've got the white panel visible. That's glued down and is not removable, and that's a bit of a shame. It does feel like you're getting a little bit less value for money with this figure than the others, but I'm not going to complain too much. Again, I missed out on the 40th anniversary release of this figure, so I'm thrilled to have it in the collection, and it is a vast upgrade over the 2014 release of Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, which by today's standards is probably one of the most outdated Black Series figures in the line. From a sculpt perspective, like I said, this one looks great. The likeness is really good. There are a few minor paint application tweaks on this figure as well. The hair is a little bit darker. The facial features appear a little bit softer than on the original release, but overall it looks fantastic. Again, Hasbro have struggled in previous years with Mark Hamill likenesses. This still leaves room for improvement, but it's definitely one of the better ones we've seen over the years. The hair is sculpted really nicely and is really nicely painted as well. Once again, different levels of paint going on in there, which really add depth to the figure itself. Photoreal face printing applied to the face itself as well, which looks great. And yeah, from a sculpt perspective, this one looks fantastic. Obviously, it's a recent release, so you've got pinless articulation technology going on, which is always a winner in my book. You've got updated articulation in and of itself, and the paint applications on this guy are really nice and crisp. I'm thrilled with how this figure turned out and really happy to finally have it in the collection. And as Daniel East 1000 alluded to in his review on this set, this Luke Skywalker figure pairs really nicely with the 40th anniversary Return of the Jedi Darth Vader figure, so I highly recommend picking that one up if you haven't done so already to really create a cool scene on your shelf. Now, accessory wise, in addition to the lack of interchangeable shirt panel, we do have the lightsaber included, which is a really nice sculpt. It is of course Luke's Return of the Jedi lightsaber with the green blade. Got some really nice silver, black and gold paint details going on there, and the blade is removable from the hilt and can be attached to the figure's belt. Articulation wise, like I said, modern articulation going on with this guy, and you can get him in some great poses. We have a ball joint at the head, butterfly joints at the shoulders, hinges at the elbows and wrists, a nice fluid ball joint at the torso, hinges at the hips, swivel cuts at the upper thigh, a hinge in the knee, a swivel cut at the top of the boot, and hinges and rockers at the ankles. So really good articulation on this figure. As you saw at the start of the review, you can pose him up holding the lightsaber with two hands, and he looks absolutely superb. And like I said, despite being the weakest figure in the set, he's still a great addition to the collection in his own right, and I can't be mad that this figure was included in the set. Like I said, from a personal standpoint, I missed out on this original release, so I'm happy to have it now. But even if you have picked up the previous release of this figure, the other three in the set are well worth picking the set up for overall. So this is a bit of a non-factor of a figure, really. If you haven't got it, bonus. If you have already got it, it's not a major issue, especially for the price that the Last Command set is currently going for. So in conclusion, is the Last Command 4-pack worth your hard-earned money? The short answer to that question is yes. If you're a fan of the expanded universe, this is an absolute must-have for the collection. And even if you're not a fan of the EU, if you just love and appreciate really good action figures, this is also worth picking up. I'm absolutely thrilled with how each and every figure in this set turned out, and even despite the heavy amount of reuse, there's enough new about this set and the figures in it to warrant the purchase, especially, like I said, given the deep discounted price it's currently available for. Joruus C'baoth and Luke are hands down the standout figures in this set. Could Hasbro have gotten away with releasing a 2-pack featuring just those two characters? Probably, but I'm really glad that they included 2 other figures in this set that I'd yet to pick up and made them new enough to warrant the purchase once again. I'm absolutely thrilled with this and that it exists. I think it really opens up the possibilities of even weirder and more wonderful characters from the old expanded universe and beyond in the Black Series, and Hasbro should definitely take a bow with this one. Even if it was overproduced or underperformed at retail, it's still an absolutely fantastic set, and I really hope it doesn't put them off releasing more expanded universe characters in the future. I've really enjoyed putting this review together for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll be back with many more reviews very, very soon. In the meantime, thank you for watching, keep collecting, and as always, may the Force be with you.